Your support. If you believe in the mission of Demotivatorshow to inform, inspire, educate and empower the African diaspora and our friends around the world, please take a moment to like this video. Every like helps more people discover these important conversations. Leave a comment below. We read your views, your experiences and your suggestions, and they often help shape our future programs. If you've not already done so, subscribe to the channel. We are building a growing community of people committed to truth, self-determination, Pan-African progress and a positive change. Please share this video with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your social media networks, and share could be the reason someone discovers information that changes their perspective forever. And finally, press the bell icon and select all notifications so you never miss an interview, analysis, a discussion, or a special broadcast. Thank you for your continued support. Together, we inform, inspire, and build a brighter future. Welcome to The Motivator Show. Breaking the chains of colonial control. We will define our identity. We will define our nations. We will define our future. Before we continue, we ask for your support. If you believe in the mission of the Demotivator Show to inform, inspire, educate and empower the African diaspora and our friends around the world, please take a moment to like this video. Every like helps more people discover these important conversations. Leave a comment below. We read your views, your experiences and your suggestions, and they often help shape our future programs. If you've not already done so, subscribe to the channel. We are building a growing community of people committed to truth, self-determination, Pan-African progress and a positive change. Please share this video with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your social media networks, and share could be the reason someone discovers information that changes their perspective forever. And finally, press the bell icon and select all notifications so you never miss an interview, analysis, a discussion, or a special broadcast. Thank you for your continued support. Together, we inform, inspire, and build a brighter future. Welcome to The Motivator Show.
Amansa!
breaking the chains of colonial control. We will define our identity. We will define our nations. We will define our future. Before we continue, we ask for your support. If you believe in the mission of the Demotivator Show to inform, inspire, educate and empower the African diaspora and our friends around the world, please take a moment to like this video. Every like helps more people discover these important conversations. Leave a comment below. We read your views, your experiences and your suggestions, and they often help shape our future programs. If you've not already done so, subscribe to the channel. We are building a growing community of people committed to truth, self-determination, Pan-African progress and a positive change. Please share this video with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your social media networks, and share could be the reason someone discovers information that changes their perspective forever. And finally, press the bell icon and select all notifications so you never miss an interview, analysis, a discussion, or a special broadcast. Thank you for your continued support. Together, we inform, inspire, and build a brighter future. Welcome to the Motivator Show. Do you feel the energy? It's the motivator here, and this is where we translate our words into action. And where success, I say again, where success is ours for the taking. How you feeling, people? We've got ahead of you a wonderful, inspirational podcast, and we're focused on, of course, South Africa. We get below the surface. We get to the truth. It is truly an inspirational experience. And we'll have our keynote dialogue in approximately 15 minutes' time. 15 minutes. But between now and then, as you know, I've got a lot to pack in, because this is the motivator, and we are very much a campaigning channel. We're here, of course, to raise the consciousness, provide academic excellence, spiritual enlightenment, and provide the motivation for us all to make changes and improvements in our lives. And together we are strong. Praise Jah, Rastafari. Long may you continue to watch this channel, because we are dedicated, we are absolutely dedicated to your personal improvement, your personal empowerment. And as we have that cumulative impact, it is the wave that is coming forward. Yeah, it is the wave that's coming forward. Okay, so let me get the first of our campaign issues. I know many of you would appreciate this. And it is quite a dynamic issue, one that affects more than 250 million women over time. And many of you will recognize it because we're one of the very few platforms that raises this issue regularly, okay? And that's the issue of FGM, female genital mutilation. We are unashamedly in support of women and girls here. Okay. And most certainly, you know, I have daughters, I have nieces, I have cousins. It is beyond all contemplation that I would allow such a process to happen to women within my circles, knowing firsthand the long term implications it can have for those women, pain and psychological trauma. And for this reason, we will stand here firm and steadfast in support of the eradication of FGM. We urge other platforms to do the same so we can save women and girls from this unjust act of mutilation on their bodies. And if in doubt, I say to people, if in doubt, ask the women, particularly those who are conscious that this has happened to them, you know, as opposed to it happening when they're babies, which is, I think, even worse. I think that's, quite, well, irresponsible of the adult. I'm going to say, yeah, irresponsible of the adult to let that happen. So we stand firm with women and girls that this will not happen to them, no, not now or into the future. To those for whom it has happened to, we sincerely apologize to you. But here on the Motivator Show, this platform will stand steadfast with you. We will not shirk away because it's a sensitive or taboo subject. We will confront it head on, because we will not stand aside and watch more of our women and girls to be mutilated in this way. As you know, we've encountered FGM champions, advocates for its eradication. One such person is former mayor and councillor Naima Ali. Okay. And she founded an organization called Unshackled Duma. Okay. We want you to listen to her principles. Listen carefully. Listen carefully. But it is most moving to hear this woman take this issue up, which is technically a taboo subject. But just listen, just listen, just listen. Naima Ali, FGM ambassador for Southwark in London, is the founder of Unshackled Duma. Unshackled Duma is a London-based organisation that empowers women and girls, particularly from Black, Asian and world majority community and Muslim communities. The organisation focuses on promoting self-empowerment, autonomy and advocacy with a strong emphasis on combating female genital mutilation, FGM. It raises awareness about FGM's harmful effects and supports survivors and works towards eradicating the practice. Unshackled Duma can be contacted via this email address: unshackleduma followed by digit2 at gmail.com. I repeat, unshackleduma followed by digit2 at gmail.com. And I know you all, because you're here on this channel, so clearly I know you understand why it's important for us to bring this particular issue to light in each of our live transmissions. Thank you, Naima Ali. Thank you to those women who've been courageous enough to speak out on this subject. And again, we apologize on behalf of the community that this was done to you. But together, we will all make the difference. Praise be, praise be, praise be. We've got now 9 minutes before our keynote dialogue. Okay. Next subject we want to raise with you. Again, quite a diversion, but quite different, but one that is incredibly important. It would arise in our keynote dialogue as well. The question of developing and evolving, supporting the wealth creators, the job creators in the communities. Yeah. One such person at the very center of the economic life here in Britain and Europe is Dr. Carlton Brown, a regular visitor here on the Motivator Show. And what he's demonstrated is a strength, a tenacity to take on this subject and organize annual events. Yeah. He has demonstrated an ability to deliver when asked to deliver. Okay. I want you to watch this short video of the event that he has organized, okay, with others, of course. He's working in consortium, okay, with the intention to put those who are business founders or those who establish in their business with suppliers, with potential customers, finance houses, okay, to provide that technical support, that can make those connections, create those networks so that our business communities can flourish. Well done, Dr. Carlton Brown. Well done, Dr. Carlton Brown. And if you've got any questions, I urge you, please ask your questions. Watch this video. And if in doubt, let me do it again. Here we go. Let me do it properly for you. Here we go. Watch this particular video. Here we go.
This is your moment. Don't let it pass. The UK Black Business Entrepreneur Conference 2026. NatWest Conference Centre, Bishopsgate, London, 8th July. Come and hear from world-class speakers and renowned entrepreneurs. If you've been thinking about starting, growing, or taking your business seriously, this is where it happens. Learn how to build and scale globally. Unlock innovation and tech to move faster. Get in the room with people who are actually doing it. No more waiting. No more watching from the sidelines. 70% sold out. The room is filling fast. Secure your seat now. www.thebbec.com. Eventbrite.
We are building a future that is not just sustainable, but truly extraordinary.
Be in the room or hear about it late. This is your moment. Don't let it pass. The UK Black Business Entrepreneur Conference 2026. NatWest Conference Centre, Bishopsgate, London, 8th July. Come and hear from world-class speakers and renowned entrepreneurs. If you've been thinking about starting, growing, or taking your business seriously, this is where it happens. Learn how to build and scale globally. Unlock innovation and tech to move faster. Get in the room with people who are actually doing it. No more waiting. No more watching from the sidelines. 70% sold out. The room is filling fast. Secure your seat now. www.thebbec.com. Eventbrite.
We are building a future that is not just sustainable, but truly extraordinary.
Be in the room or hear about it late. This is your...
Absolutely. In fact, I was corresponding with Dr. Carlton Brown this morning, and I'm told that the numbers of available tickets are rapidly running out. Yeah, rapidly running out is what you'd expect. It is going to be, it's be shoulder to shoulder. You're meeting people who are highly motivated, natural wealth creators, great employment, develop skills. Yeah, so that is the cornerstone of all communities, all civilizations. That's the place to be. That's the place to be. And I would encourage you, if you haven't bought your ticket yet, I wouldn't wait until the completion of this weekend. I would do it right now if I were you. And yes, the motivator will be there too. Well done, Dr. Colton Brown. Well done, well done. Long may you continue your great works. Long may you continue. Praise Jah, Rastafari. We've now got 4 minutes before our keynote dialogue. And one more issue, if I can slip this one in. Again, quite a diverse collection that I want to give light to. Many of you will be well aware that climate change is real. In the past 7 years, we've had record global temperatures. And that global temperature change is affecting our weathers. One of the consequences of this change is, of course, storms, superstorms. They're now impacting the Caribbean, and they have been for the past 2 years. 2025, it was, of course, Hurricane Beryl. 2026, It was Super Hurricane Melissa. Yeah? Category 5, wind speed of 87 miles an hour, more than 100 kilometers per hour, and caused devastation across the island of Jamaica. Many public buildings were destroyed. Many lives, income abilities were destroyed. The island is still rebuilding, recovering from Melissa. And we're still fearful that this year, with notice of an El Nino, which might accentuate the extreme weather conditions, that it may happen again this year. So it's incredibly important to give support where you can. And notwithstanding the clear operational failures of the current Jamaican government, which we gave light to in a few episodes ago, an organization based here in Britain, referred to as the PNP UK, have committed themselves to build back better those public buildings that people absolutely rely upon. And one such site is a basic school, an infant school for babies, you know? Yeah, the most vulnerable members of our community. I want to play for you a very short video, which is being committed by a principal of a basic school in Jamaica. And it is, I've got to say, heart-wrenching. Heart-wrenching because this principal is appealing to the international community to help build that school back. To repair the roof so we have some security for the babies, for the little ones, as she calls them. And she speaks with such compassion, such heart. Can you help? Appleby asks, can you help? Listen to this. Sorry, not the wrong one. I'm sorry. Let me get the correct one up on our screen. In fact, I may not be able to put up one up on our screen, or can I? Or maybe I can't on this occasion. Don't you worry. I'll play that later on. I think in that case, then, I think I can now move to our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker, indeed, keynote dialogue, is focused on South Africa. I want to share with you what an exercise I carried out earlier this week. I created a completely new profile for myself. So the machine was aware that I'm a person of African ascent. The person was aware that I'm upwardly mobile and I want to return to South Africa. So I created an account on the major social media platforms. Within 2 hours of me creating that profile, went on to X. During those 2 hours, my senses were assaulted by abject violence of Africans against Africans. That's all I saw. Indeed, Africans supposedly, in this case South Africans, objecting to other African immigrants in South Africa. That's all I saw. That's all it was. It assaulted my senses. And if I didn't have sufficient sense, I would have believed this to be real. I've subsequently now discovered that many of those videos were not real. Indeed, I had similar experiences on, yes, TikTok and Instagram. It was clear that these social media platforms were seeking to shape my mentality, a form of mechanical hypnosis, if you like, to believe not in xenophobia, but in Afrophobia, which is the dislike of other Africans. I want to give notice here today that I reject such notions. I reject such attitudes. And I give a clear warning to all Africans there that this is what's happening. These platforms are seeking to shape our attitude, to shape our thinking. Yeah, it is real. I urge you to try the experiment for yourself. Completely new, fresh profile. Yep, completely new machine. Okay, and see what happens to you. And if I'm wrong, I don't mind admitting I'm wrong. But I tried it on 3 separate occasions, and it happened on 3 separate occasions. Very worrying, very disturbing. So it does seem to me that what is happening in South Africa appear to be contrived, at least on the surface. There are genuine issues, and the South African government has an absolute right to control its borders, because clearly that's one of the first duties of any government. Yes? And absolutely, there is real concern in South Africa for the levels of unemployment, particularly youth unemployment, which is a national travesty. Equally, I need to I observe that the small minority of Eurasians in South Africa control more than 98% of the nation's wealth. That is a national disaster, and clearly could very well be argued is a source of the current tension. But that's an hypothesis I put out there, and I urge you all to explore that hypothesis. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I urge you to place before us the evidence if I am wrong. Because generally, Africans are peaceful people. We will happily coexist with others of diverse backgrounds, happily, if they are respectful, of course. That's why, across the continent, we have the highest concentration of human civilization, diverse human civilizations in the world. The broadest range of languages and cultures and traditions that exist in a single continent. Yes, indeed, the birthplace of humankind. It is a part of our tradition. It's in our DNA to cooperate. It's only when you experience extreme conditions of despair and desperation would you behave in this manner. A tiny minority controlling the overwhelming wealth of that country. I smell a rat. I smell a rat. In my political experience, those who control wealth significantly influence the politics and politicians, therefore. Again, if I've got that wrong, I'm happy for you to place evidence to the contrary. But that has been my experience, whether it be here in Britain or in the Caribbean. United States of America, absolutely. That country is controlled by big corporations. It's highly probable it is true for South Africa. And that imbalance, that disparity, that genuine disparity, I hypothesize is the source of the problem. If I'm wrong, I urge you to speak out. You can make comments in the comment section for this video. Please, we want to hear from you. Okay. But if I'm right, there must be a response. And you would have seen the intro to this episode of Demotivatorshow. We put together an intro. So watch this intro, and immediately thereafter, the dialogue will begin. This is an important dialogue. This is an important episode of The Motivator Show. Okay? We say to you, If in doubt, ask questions. Watch this. Amandla.
Amandla! 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 Amandla!
Breaking the chains of colonial control, we will define our identity. We will define our nations. We will define our future. Yes, he's starting up strong. And we absolutely will define our futures. Faith Joe, Rastafari. Now it is time for the keynote dialogue, an incredibly important dialogue, a dialogue that will get to the heart of the issue in South Africa. It is an honest dialogue amongst South Africans with diverse backgrounds. Although I must say in advance that we'd invited members who were marching, supported the marchers. Okay? For their own reasons, they did not appear. But we hope in a future episode of the Demotivatorshow Show that we can fill that gap. But this dialogue, nevertheless, is incredibly important. Thank you for your time. Watch on. And if in doubt, ask question. It's the motivator here, and this is where we translate our words into action. And where success, I say again, where success is ours for the taking. Hey people, I've got another inspirational podcast ahead of us today. We've got two great African men. They're going to discuss with us the issues that's impacting South Africa. It may well have a continental African perspective. It most certainly has an international perspective. And that's the issue of immigration and contribution that immigrants make to a nation state that they transfer to. Mm-hmm. It's a particularly interesting subject, because I'm aware that our friends in the United States of America, okay, and the person who currently occupies that big house in Washington, is very much in favor of anti-immigrant sentiments. I believe that's a reasonable assessment, okay? And it's very much in favor, wherever possible, to heap humiliation on the whole of Africa, not just a single country in Africa. Mm-hmm. And it is most curious to find in South Africa the place of such great people, the place, well, in fact, I'll get to those people in a moment. We're going to have a discussion on what is happening in South Africa. We're going to delve below the surface and better understand the context, historical context, the contemporary issues that have arisen, and what it will mean for the future of that country. It is the quality of our dialogue from which we will all learn from each other. So I want to turn first of all to what is a familiar face here on the Motivator Show. And I can immediately introduce him of King Kabala of the African Continental Unity Party. How are you, sir? How are you?
Greetings to you, King Martin. Greetings to my elder in the room today. And greetings to all African people. those at home, those abroad, and even those in the future. I'm doing great. Thank you so much, and I hope you're doing great as well.
Thank you. And I would say thank you for joining us today. It is quite important that yourselves are involved in this dialogue, a dialogue which will address some rather fundamental issues in relation to African unity. Fundamental issues. Okay? And I'm pleased you're here. But I now need to turn to my other guest, who is a new guest here on the Motivator Show. And I'm going to ask you, sir, just to say your name and the organization that you are representing. And I may have a follow-up question for you immediately afterward. Please, go ahead.
Yes. My name is Jackie Seroge. I am the Deputy President of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. It was and it still continues to regard itself as part of the liberation movement. It was established in 1959 and was here today.
Thank you again for that introduction. So that sets the scene. Okay. And what I want to ask before I get into my main questions, okay, and I should say this, that many Africans argue that the roots of today's migration challenges can be traced back to the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, when European powers divided Africa into colonial territories. Now, so I want to ask a question, because I'm not going to talk about the borders created by Europeans. I'm going to ask you this question. What tribe or community do you belong to? We want to know about you, sir. Jackie, tell us a bit more about you, the community or tribe that you belong to.
It's easy for me to say that because in South Africa, the people were delineated or described and put into slots called tribes. And we fought against it because when they said you belong to a tribe, it meant you belong to a piece of ground in South Africa that was called the Bantustan. And when South Africa emerged, it was 13%. I belong to my parents, my father and my mother, speak Setswana. And this Setswana spreads up to Botswana, up to Namibia. I believe you still have the same language in other parts of Africa, like in Zambia, there's a migration of people who left Lesotho, mixed with Botswana, and they're called Barotse or something like that. So I belong to that group. But in terms of how I describe myself, not as a tribe, we called our totem symbol is the crocodile. So we call ourselves Bakwena as part of that Sotho language-speaking group in Southern Africa. It is what we identify ourselves with our praises, and where we belong. And I feel comfortable saying very well that I am a Mokwena. I belong to the people of the crocodile.
Fascinating. You may not know this, but I was born in Jamaica. There is a national symbol, which, as you may be familiar, involve the crocodile. I think maybe alligator on that side, but nevertheless, the same symbol. Oh my gosh. Are we related? The Jamaican national motto is "Out of many, one people," based on the population multi-ethnic roots. The motto is represented on the coat of arms, showing the male and female members of the Tino people, standing on either side of a shield which bears the red cross and 5 golden pineapples. The crest shows a Jamaican crocodile mounted on the royal helmet. Crocodile's symbolic meaning: as one of the oldest and most resilient creatures on the island, the crocodile embodies strength, endurance, resilience, and a deep connection to Jamaica's natural environment. Praise Jah, Rastafari. Are we related? Wow. Now, for all Jamaicans, you heard this. Yeah, you heard this, huh? And many of them, there are many Jamaicans who've forgotten their African roots, but yet the influence is profound. Oh my gosh. I'll put it on the screen for others to see, the symbol for Jamaica. My gosh. Powerful. And I hear in your descriptors that my grandfather would have applied. Oh my gosh. Now, this was not rehearsed, people. But I didn't know until this very moment. Wow. I may, at another time, have the opportunity to probe you further on your peoples, the language and the customs, traditions. Wow. I'm now overwhelmed by that. I'm actually overwhelmed, but I'll come back to you in a moment. Ken Kabbalah, can I ask you the same question? Forgive me if I use the word tribe, or community, or ethnic group, whichever descriptor is applicable to you, that you come from on the continent of Africa.
So thank you for the questions. I was born in DRC, that we know, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Well, as always, as a Pan-Africanist, I would say that I was born in the colonial enclosure called the DRC, of course. So,
Indeed.
Breaking the chains of colonial control, we will define our identity. We will define our nations. We will define our future. Before the time of the colonists, the enslavers, Africa possesses more than 2,000 nations or ethnic peoples, and they include, amongst many others, the Zulu people in the south, the Hausa people in the west, the Somali nation in the east, the Maori people in the west, the Bantu people in the central area, the Herero people in the southwest, the Hausa people in the south, Mbele and Twazna people in the south, Luba people in the central, Amari people in the east, Tigray, Nubian, Dinka, Tibu, amongst many others, the Wolof, amongst many others, the Gur, amongst many others.
You have like 420 so-called tribes, but in African etymology, that should be called nations that have come together to form a word. I would use a nation, so I'm part of what is called the Luba nation of the DRC Congo. Yeah.
And not to press it unduly, but can you maybe describe the national symbol that we would recognize? Is there a national symbol that you recall? I know we haven't rehearsed this.
Yeah, so I think at the national level, the symbol is a leopard.
The leopard is widely revered across many African nations and cultures as a powerful symbol of royalty, strength, wisdom, stealth, courage, nobility, and spiritual authority. The spiritual and ancestral significance of the leopard is seen as a bridge between the physical and spiritual world, a guardian of the dead, protector, or spiritual guide. Its skin is used in ritual for ancestral blessings, initiation ceremonies, and spiritual power. For example, amongst the Zulus, the Zangomas, the Yorubas, traditions linked to deities like the Oya and Olakun and others. In some beliefs, it symbolizes transformation, intuition, and unseen power. Honor and respect to honor.
using leopard to identify themselves. So from where I am specifically, the symbol that they use to praise us, especially from my own claim, where we coming from, I think it's artisan. The artisan, the mother of artisan, that's how they call us. So all of us, they will call me in my village, they call me, I'm a mother of artisan. Whether you are a man or woman, they call all of us the mothers of artisans.
All right. Well, see, we're learning. This is what we need. This needs to happen far more often. You have no idea. There are, what, 250, 300 million of me out there who are still distant from our root, our real roots. And just listening to you both, it's truly empowering. Truly empowering. But I need to ask this question as a follow-up to you both. To what extent do you believe the current tension surrounding foreigners in South Africa are a consequence of those colonial borders? Okay. What do you think? You described your own borders, where you're located, but what extent? Jackie, do you want to go first to respond to that question?
Yes, South Africa is perhaps different from the rest of the continent when we read the history and so on. But it will be understood in this context. There was a clash, a recorded war between the Boers, who are a mixture of the Dutch and others. They had been hounded out of Europe on religious grounds. They were called the Huguenots, and they came to Southern Africa and began, because they were discriminated against by on grounds of religion. They formed themselves into a new group, which now calls itself the Afrikaners, and they moved into the interior of the land during those times and established two republics, the Free State and the Transvaal, that are now part of South Africa. But then you also had the British, who had what they called the Cape in the southern part, the whole Cape, and then they had Natal, which is where KwaZulu is also placed. So these four areas formed South Africa and excluded the indigenous people that they found in the country, and made South Africa into what it is right now, because it was based on the findings of minerals. The weather was good. Almost everything about South Africa was fine for trading and for staying. So they were going to stay here permanently. So when we describe South Africa, we say it is a settler colonial state, because the settlers are here to stay. It's complex in that sense, because it's not that when we say foreigners, colonial foreigners. So, but when they established South Africa, they excluded the majority of all people who are indigenous that they found here, the natives they call them, and they established an act to create a country called South Africa.
Yes.
That South Africa is there even today. Internationally, it has been accepted that there's a country called South Africa. We went through several constitutions and brought into the last constitution in 1994, which said there's a new South Africa now.
Right.
That new South Africa was built on what I've just described. So the issues of poverty, exclusion, and so on remained. In other words, when these reforms and changes were made, they were made at the top for elites, but the majority of the people on the ground were not affected by those changes. But
I understand, yes.
To say it very well, the government compensated for that absence of grooming the other community. It's like a pyramid, and at the bottom of the pyramid, there are a majority of people who are given grants to survive on, and pensions, sick grants, and disability grants, and all forms of grants, just to eke out a living and to survive, to be bailed out and so on. That's the South Africa we have now.
Thank you. Can I may I ask the same question? Thank you, Jackie. Ask the same question of you, King Kabala. So, to what extent do you believe that the current tensions surrounding foreigners in South Africa are a consequence of those colonial borders that was created in 1884 to 1885 Berlin Conference?
The situation that we have in South Africa today, particularly, but I would say as well, generally, the overall situation that you can find in other part of the continent are the consequences of the Berlin Conference, 1884 and 1885, because what happened at the Berlin Conference was not just the physical divide of the continent, so the physical partition of the continent, but it was, as well, as far as I'm concerned, a psychological partition of the continent, as well as even spiritual partition of the continent. And that's the reason why, actually, when they divided us, they gave us names. They called some of us the Forest of Lions. They called some of us the area of Negroes, for example, Nigeria. When it was conquered, the British representative who conquered Nigeria asked his girlfriend, darling, what name can we call these people? And the girlfriend said, just call them nigger areas. And from there you have Nigeria. The same thing with Niger, because they were conquered almost at the same time.
Yep.
You go to Ghana, it was named the Gold Coast. You go to Cameroon, you go to Cote d'Ivoire, it was called Ivory Coast, Cameroon,
That's right.
which is like Forest of Lion or something like that. So all these things, identification.
Breaking the chains of colonial control, we will define our identity. We will define our nations. We will define our future.
Is a spiritual process. That's even the reason why Stokely Carmichael, aka Kwame Ture, said that the first act of revolution is to define yourself and then make other people agreeing with how you define yourself. But the fact that you have been defined by other people, it means you are a subject of those people politically as well as spiritually and psychologically. So today we're defined as Congolese, as Nigerian. It's not just the physical border that we see, but in our psychology, we have grown up to believe, we look at each other with disdain because that one is not belonging to us, does not carry our names, our emblems. So yes, briefly to answer to your question, what we see in South Africa today is definitely the consequence of the Berlin Conference.
Well said. Thank you. That was very clear, and I know the masses can understand your descriptor because we can all relate to it. I'm a Jamaican, a name that was not granted the country by us Africans. No, it was granted by others. That must change. I say to all Jamaicans, we must change the name of the nation. Yep, there you are. It's going out. We must change the name of that nation. Africanized the nation's name. Absolutely, absolutely. But you have now placed for us, both of you placed for us some context for the current supposed tensions of the peoples in the country we call South Africa. Okay, and I just want to take us further because this is really quite important. Political independence was achieved decades ago, yet many argue that former colonial powers and their multinational corporations continue to dominate the African economies. To what extent does South Africa exercise genuine economic sovereignty today? And just to be clear, when I say South Africa, I am meaning political control by Africans as opposed to the Eurasians role. Okay? So to what extent are we able to exert genuine economic sovereignty today? You could choose who wished to go first. Jackie?
I'd like to take it up.
Of course.
Not that he can come add in as well. But we should look at this thing this way. You know, the whole colonial project, the Western powers, 1884 Berlin Conference,
Yes,
was a trade relationship. They were organizing trade among themselves and making these borders in order to say, this is my share of the trade, and I will trade in these areas exclusively.
yes.
And they also had a philosophy behind it to say, in that area, we will not really be bothered by what we find in the area. They even went to the extent that they would even exterminate those that they found there.
That's right.
So if you look at that colonial project, most of the people, there's so much genocide on the African continent that has not been recorded. The pogroms have happened in South Africa on countless occasions. In Namibia, for instance, I mean, the Germans are only now beginning to say we admit.
Go ahead. Keep going, Jackie.
Oh, okay. My point really is that that trade deal meant that the indigenous people meant for nothing except for cheap labor or to be used at will as you like, or alternatively, just to get rid of them. In the Congo, they cut people's hand if they could not produce enough products, particularly. We know all these horrors that have taken place. I don't even want to go to the Atlantic slave trade. But the point is, they did not see in that trade deal local people as human beings to start with. However, because there were other wars and they agreed out of a sense of guilt that they must be decent, they agreed on self-determination, and all these other independence project allowed for a change of flag and so on, but did not in any way deal with the substance of the economy that they are talking about. It's really hard to deal with this because 30 years ago, the same thing happened in South Africa. I was at the negotiations table. They refused to deal with property relations. And we know that trade starts with property relations. They said, no, we want to craft a human rights constitution and we're not going to deal with property because some of the property must be bought back. And you know, they made a whole hoo-ha. Or it was either you get a human rights constitution or nothing.
Oh.
And in the negotiations, obviously, it's a push and pull, and the whole international community was putting pressure on South Africa to get rid of petty apartheid, get rid of apartheid completely, but have something different for the future. And it meant that the Afrikaner and white people here had an exclusive arrangement on a hold on the economy. They improved their lives, they could trade with the world, whilst the majority of the people at the bottom of the pyramid continued to serve. Of course, it also produced an elite grouping among African people who are members of parliament, about 400 of them each term, and you have economic policies that are meant to make people believe there are changes, people buying shares, but not actually a billionaire here and a billionaire there.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, today with an estimated net worth of approximately 450 million US dollars or 7.4 billion rand. Cyril Ramaphosa stands as a unique figure in South African history, having achieved prominence as a trade union organizer, successful businessman, and now head of state. Ramaphosa returned to frontline politics and became President of South Africa on the 15th of February 2018. He completed the remainder of the presidential term following the resignation of Jacob Zuma, won a full 5-year mandate in 2019 and was re-elected in June 2024 to lead South Africa's government of national unity. Having served for more than 8 years as president, he remains a central figure in shaping South Africa's political and economic future. In 1982, Ramaphosa co-founded the National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, and became its first General Secretary. Under its leadership, the union grew from a small organisation into South Africa's largest trade union, representing more than 300,000 members. He played a leading role in organising the historic 1987 mine workers' strike, one of the largest industrial action in South Africa's history, which increased pressure on the then apartheid government. He also was instrumental in the creation of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, known as COSATU, in 1985, helping to unite the organised labour in the struggle for democracy. Following South Africa's transition to democracy, Ramaphosa moved into the business sector, where he built a highly successful corporate career. In 2001, he founded the Shanduka Group, an investment company with interest in mining, energy, telecommunications and other industries. He also served on the board of major international companies, including McDonald's, Coca-Cola and Standard Bank. Through his agricultural interest, particularly the breeding of Pride and Guli cattle on his Fela farm, he further expanded his business portfolio.
Show the world that on the black side there has been various changes, but at the bottom, at the rock bottom, people have been catching hell.
Mm-hmm. I hear you, and we'll delve further into this later on in our dialogue. Thank you, Jackie, for that very clear response. King Kibana, I'll read this question again for you. You may not have heard it in its entirety. My question is: political independence was achieved decades ago. Yet many argue that the former colonial powers and their multinational corporations continue to dominate African economies. Now, to what extent does South Africa exercise genuine economic sovereignty today? And when I say South Africa, I'm referring, of course, to African South African, black South African.
I think my elder Jackie has properly outlined the economic profile of South Africa. Mm-hmm. I think your question can briefly be answered by asking who controls the means of production and distribution of wealth of South Africa among the population of South Africa. Then once you have that or those statistics, the answer is clear. You have the minority who that represent, I don't know, for now it's probably 11% of the population.
South Africa's Euro-Asian communities constitute between 7 to 8% of the country's population, but they hold control over more than 85% of the country's wealth. This disparity is the source of the dissatisfaction and disaffection within South Africa.
South Africa control like 87% of the land, and all the means of productions are in their hands. So already you know where lies the economic power. But I think one thing that we need to understand about in political independence, whether of South Africa or of any country in Africa, is the reason that was behind the political independence itself that we have acquired, all of us. I think the motivation to give Africans a political independence was strategic. It was not related to anything that has to deal with the liberation of African people. It was economic strategy, because managing colonies was becoming so expensive because all these colonial powers, we have to understand that they were running hospitals, they were running police, they were running all the administration of the colonies, which means they had to exploit the land and derive a portion of that exploitation to manage the colonies. And it was becoming expensive for them. So what they had to do was to find a strategy to pass that management to Africans themselves. And then they could just get the dividend from Africa. That's what happened. So starting from 1950s, black people were put in place in power, were becoming president, ministers, even down to South Africa, where then they had to manage themselves. They had to pay their own police. They had to pay their own public servants.
You're neatly coming to my follow-up question, which is that South Africa is rich in minerals, agricultural land. It has definitely human talent. So why do many citizens still experience poverty and unemployment despite the country's considerable wealth? And who benefit most from South Africa's economic resources? I suppose that's the question I think you're answering now. You respond to that question in that case.
No, I mean, that leads to my previous answer.
Yes.
Of course, South Africa is rich in mineral resources and the rich land, but these resources are controlled not by the majority of the South Africans. These resources are controlled by corporations who are registered at London Stock Exchange or New York Stock Exchange, which means the money that they exploit out of this country and other countries in Africa where they are is not even benefiting the South African. South Africa as a country or the South African people is actually, as I said, goes to the New York Stock Exchange or London Stock Exchange, and that is the result of the misery and the despair that you can see among the South African people.
Yes, absolutely, and I can definitely relate to this. And I mentioned Jamaica early on, and this will come to no surprise to you that at the point of so-called independence in 1962, August 1962, Africans in Jamaica gained political independence, so-called, okay, but most certainly did not gain economic independence. The former enslaver families controlled 99% of the Jamaican economy. Yeah? Africans at that time could not own the assets, could not create wealth in Jamaica. At the point of independence, we had no control over the economy. Yeah? And they call that independence, which little wonder why countries like Jamaica have floundered for the past 60 years or so, because the economy was not and has not been and still is not very much in the control of the majority African population. And this is a big issue because, of course, if you control the wealth, you can therefore control the politicians, the politics of the country. If you control the wealth, you control information flow within the country, and thereby can affect attitudes of people. Mm-hmm. If you control the wealth, you control the health services. If you control the wealth, you control public services, and so on and so on. We did not gain independence, and clearly South Africa did not gain genuine independence. It is stark. It's very, very stark. I now need to move on to my next questions. And South Africans, indeed, will recognize this. Okay. Many marchers taking jobs, business opportunities from South Africans. Now, based upon the evidence available, how much of South Africa's unemployment crisis can genuinely be attributed to immigration rather than structural economic challenges of the type we've just discussed? You tell us, is it mostly immigrants have caused the problem? Or would you say it is a reasonably balanced, or is the descriptions you've both been applying as a result of the inequality originally built into the South African economy, okay, where a minority controls plus 90% of the wealth creation in the country? Who wish to go first? I'm going to ask, if I may, Jack, I'm going to ask King Kabbalah to go first this time, just to give him an opportunity. Then you come in. King Kabbalah.
The question has to be put in a context so that one can be able to properly answer. But before I even look into the context, before I look into the way of answering the question, the general context is that what we see in South Africa is the crisis of capitalism, because it is the same thing that we see even in the United States, the same thing that you see now even in the European countries such as Italy, and even Great Britain of the UK. So you see the very same tendency, and I look at it as the crisis of capitalism. And not long ago, I was in a conference where somebody articulated it properly by saying that a capitalist, even though bad as it is or it used to be, before, in the past century, at least the capitalism was able to produce the goods and service, right, that people needed. But as we're speaking right now, capitalism is no longer producing even the material goods that people want. Capitalism has become now a kind of money gambling, economic agenda, if I have to use that term. So you hear big numbers that the economy is growing, but it's growing in your stock exchange, which produces nothing, and there's a book written in 2018 by I think Peter Phillip, an American author, who argued, the title of the book is the giant, the global, the transnational capitalist class. As he argued, he said the world economy is now congested or stuck to the point where there are only few areas of investment that can potentially bring a great return. Those areas of investments are war sponsoring or war investment into war, and then buying all the state companies or properties, and also money gambling. So the real production of goods and service is no longer really effective for capitalists, because it's not producing much return that they expect out of the investment. So when capitalism stuck and is unable to produce or to answer to the question or to respond to the needs of the people, capitalist tenants always have to find victims of the failure of capitalism.
Yes.
And today, in most cases, when you look in America, the victims are foreigners. Donald Trump will tell you that our country is polluted, our economy is bad because we have foreigners coming to pollute our country and our culture. The same thing that you see in the UK, and that is the same thing that you see in South Africa. In other words, when politicians have no solutions for the crisis that the people are facing, they have to blame those crises on other people, other victims. Unfortunately, those are the immigrants. So that is the context. But to answer to the question specifically in the case of South Africa, I think foreigners are not really taking all the jobs of South Africans, because the last I heard, foreigners or foreign nationals in South Africa represent something like 4 or 5% of the population.
Confirmed. Foreign nationals make up between 3.7 and 5.1% of the total South African population, according to the official data released by the Statistics South Africa, the official government department.
It's not even 10% of the population. So you can't tell me that the 5% of the population will take the jobs of 50 million people. It doesn't make sense. So the problem here is that the economy in South Africa is stagnant to the point where it doesn't produce more jobs, because every day or every year we have out of school. South African kids who are coming out of school who have to get a job in order to build their family. And if you dump all these people in the society, but you don't create more jobs in order to accommodate them, what you have is frustration. And for you to handle that frustration, you need to divert the anger of the people, not towards you, but toward victims who cannot defend themselves. Hence, you get the story about foreigners are taking jobs.
Thank
Even
you
when
very
you talk
much.
about the crimes, is the same scenario.
The same scenario, and thank you for that. That's very clear. That's very clear. Can I go to you, Jackie? You may wish to add to it, or give your own reflection on that question.
Yes, I totally agree with the analysis presented,
Yes.
but I also want to try and give it graphic and clear expression in the way in which it affects local people. First, I think that South Africa is regarded as an outpost of Western style of government, including the infrastructure of its economy, and everybody agrees it's an advanced economy with financial systems in place, telecommunication, almost everything that we think the modern world needs can easily be fast-tracked in South Africa. But the question is, who benefits from that? And that infrastructure, if it has been done, who really made it? Who's the architect and who controls everything there? And I tell you, the people who must be developed are nowhere near the plans. They are nowhere near this. They're just recipient of a few crumbs from the table, and they're made to be seen to be enjoying this environment. But in reality, the contradiction is that, and this is my graphic description, you have a movement called Sentin. It has one of the highest buildings in the. A 10 square mile that is very rich on the African continent. You know, in that area, the rich, we don't even give you a second glance if you are driving the most expensive cars, because there are many other cars like that.
Yes.
However, if you go across the highway, less than 5 kilometers from Sentin, you have an area where I was born and I grew up called Alexandra. That Alex is a ghetto. It's an area that has received people who migrate from the rural communities to the urban area over the years, and despite what is happening right now. But it's a high density area, in such a way that you will find it difficult to describe a pavement and a road, the real road, because of the congestion. And life is on a 24-hour basis, because those who sleep during the day, at night they have a nightlife and so on. It's extremely bad.
Yes.
Actually, it's rat infested, it's filthy. And of course, side by side with that, we do have decent people. I'm not saying everything is, but it's a ghetto. It's real. I'm not sure which other area can I compare it with in Africa, but I believe that in Kenya and Nairobi there is a place like that. You could find them almost everywhere in the world, because we eke a living, we eke out a living and begin to survive. Now, this is where the issue of migration or anti-foreigners, or whichever way you want to call it, finds its expression, because now people are fighting for space, and the one who survives, who seem to be streetwise and understand and have enough skills and have an easy entry into the marketplace, they get jobs in the restaurants and so on, is seen as the enemy. But this is where the trick of the crisis of capitalism comes in. It works and it thrives on these divisions, just like colonialism thrived on divide and conquer principle.
Yes.
In South Africa, you also have a real problem in the rural community. You also have a history of violence, we called it black on black violence in the media, but in reality, this is something that is engineered by, they call it a task force, but a hidden hand drives these things. And if you remember, before 1994 came to a settlement, there was a bloodbath based on the conflict between people in the rural areas, particularly the ones who come from a traditional Zululand kingdom. Now, you have in this current debate a revival of that image that people know throughout the world, where if you walk in the street, you could be killed. And it's scary. And I think the people who are behind this are exaggerating and taking advantage of the situation.
Thank you. I may come back to you both on this issue of the current situation being attributed to immigrants, and I might talk about immigrants in greater detail in a moment. But I just want to tackle an issue which I'm very sensitive to, and that's the issue of young South Africans. And you both alluded to it earlier on, face some of the highest unemployment rates in the world, up to 60-70% in some areas, I understand. What message should political leaders and community organizations be given to young people who feel frustrated, excluded, and attracted to anti-immigration movements? What message should the political leaders be given to young people? Jackie, do you want to go first?
Yes, look, I certainly agree with intergenerational dialogue, because young people sometimes believe, because of the advanced technologies around, that the past, or people who are born before technology, as they say, do not know how to find their ways in the modern world. And that they come with outdated ideas and have failed in so many ways to bring their lives to an area of ease. Yeah. Now, the intergenerational dialogue should be fair and square to many, that instead of looking romantically at the past and saying things have been rosy all along, identify those problem spots, because you cannot build the future if you don't understand where you come from, and you don't have ultimate control on the current situation and meaningful ways of getting into the future. So the unemployment issue in particular, I think that the elite, our generation that I belong to, did not adequately plan and implement programs to contain the youth in their advances in the modern world. They did not even, South Africa is insular. They didn't even have a plan to say, our doctors were in the march in the streets today, can go and do work in other areas in Africa with a government program. We haven't even dealt with someone to go and work in Angola and places like that, because they're scared of the images they think of when the rest of the African continent is discussed. So we need an open dialogue to clear ways about this, to make it easy for us to interact with the world, because the international community, especially the African community, is one. And we shouldn't look at our development with myopic lenses, because then we will not be able to develop adequately. And I think the example of China, this one China policy, two systems in areas, but the Chinese are hardworking and they're focused. So in Africa, we haven't done that. And Africa is the future. The young people we are talking about, in meridian terms, are the majority of people in the world, and they will make a majority going into the future. So we have to look at this not only on a South African base, but on a whole world basis, in such a way that we look at Africa and its modernization in those terms. And we need to create our own jobs. That's basically what I'm saying.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure. King Kabala, how do you respond to my question that young South Africans face some of the highest unemployment rates in the world? What message should political leaders and community organisations be giving to young people who feel frustrated, excluded, and attracted to the anti-immigration movements? How to?
Yeah, I mean, honestly speaking, I don't think at this point young South Africans want to hear or reason with any kind of messages from political leaders, because they've been waiting for a long time and they've heard a lot of messages and promises. We have the Agenda 2030 set in South Africa, which is about to finish with no accomplishment of any promise. Just like the Agenda 2060 that the African Union set a couple of years back, and it's going to be 2060 soon and with no realization. So I think political leaders need to bring solutions, not to bring messages anymore, because there's no one who will listen to their messages. They need to bring solutions. They need to create jobs. They need to solve the crisis to appease the emotions and the anger of the young people, because what is happening now, they are doing the solution of the masses. They defy the law, they defy the institutions, because these laws and these institutions are no longer responding to the cries of the people. So the only thing that can appease people is practical, realistic solutions. No more promises, no more messages.
Okay. So we now get to a point in which we could discuss these marches. Okay. Now, supporters of the marches insist that foreigners must go before the 30th of June, which is not long. I must say, not long. What practical outcomes do they hope to achieve? And do you believe such a policy would address the concerns of ordinary South Africans? Should all foreigners leave by the 30th of June, which soon would include the so-called white or Euro-Asian foreigners in South Africa, one presumes? Who wishes to go first? Jackie, do you want to go first on this one?
I went to a discussion with the March on March leaders and members of parliament. That meeting was held at the Union Building. I think it's early this month or towards the end of May, where when these things were flaring up about the March on March strategy was unfolding, and to address the issue of the 30th of June as a deadline. And I have to put it in two ways. I think people who make campaigns in order to get a greater following, they put a date so that the campaign can be seen to have an ending, a beginning and an ending, and a goal within that ending. And I think I also want to say that they made a strong argument that the government structures are not responsible enough. There's corruption within the government departments, and they have allowed lawlessness to come into play here, and they are taking active citizenship on the issue. I don't buy that story. I think that there's a motivation behind it to create chaos, and it's also made by people who think lowly of themselves, and they take the head out onto innocent people. I don't think that even if you have illegals, people who are not well documented, you should go out. People have the right to go out, hound them out from wherever they are, and push them out of the country. That is mere anarchy. And the government has to take direct responsibility for this type of outcomes. The individual or the leaders of the marches can be identified. I mean, we know who they are, and they obviously have a motivation behind it. I think that the 30th of June is practically impossible. You can't get rid of people like that. It's just logistically It's not possible for you to do that within a short time like this. However, the reason they make it is to create an atmosphere in which further lawlessness and chaos can happen. And people are now frightened. They don't know what will happen to them on the 29th and the 30th of June if they are not ready to go, they are not out of the country. And this also includes people who are documented. Now, any serious government would not allow that. So there will be a clash of wills.
Hold on, Jackie. I've got to ask a question, though. And I'm a little suspicious. And look, South Africans who are watching this, I'm suspicious. I did an exercise earlier this week. I went onto a computer I've not touched previously, and I created a profile, a new profile for myself, okay? And therefore, the machine understood that I'm an African man, okay? Living in Britain, okay? But seeking to return to South Africa, as far as it was concerned. I went on to Twitter, or X. What I received over a 2-hour period was over 70 videos of Africans attacking other fellow Africans. Violence, enormous, incredible violence being meted out by Africans against Africans. Went on to TikTok, another one. So all I received was Africans attacking. Oh my gosh, the brutality was awful. And similarly on Instagram. Okay. The impression I'm getting that I used the term early on, foreigners, and you could use the term xenophobic behavior. Okay, we could use that term. Okay. Well, what I believe I'm seeing actually is Afrophobia.
Xenophobia, having an irrational fear, strong dislike, or deep-seated prejudice against people from other countries or cultures. Afrophobia, a prejudice, discrimination, and systematic racism specifically directed at black people and individuals of African descent.
Well, other Africans are deliberately targeting Africans. I didn't see Euro-Asian people from Holland or Netherlands or Britain or France being attacked. I didn't see people from India being attacked. I didn't see Chinese people being attacked. I didn't see Pakistani people being attacked. All I saw was Africans attacking other Africans. So if it's foreigners, do they mean foreigners in the broadest sense? Or do they actually mean other Africans? Because I've seen flights from South Africa to Nigeria, South Africa to Ghana, where the nationals have left the country because they've been attacked. These are people who, for the most part, who've taken their life savings and invested in South Africa, and created employment in South Africa. They're not exploiting the people. There's no suggestion of that, but they're invested in the country. Exactly what you want. So, am I right in the observation that primarily those who have been targeted for this type of lawlessness are actually other Africans? Yeah, I don't mind being corrected. I don't mind being corrected, Jackie or King Kabbalah, but that's what I'm seeing.
Well, I feel strongly about this, but I think it is. You see, we still have a great deal of colonial mentality in the African communities. We have slave mentality, and we believe that wrongly so that the rest of the continent can be easy targets, because they can be easily dismissed. And I say it's colonial mentality because the logic of termination, that's what they call it, of getting rid of people en masse and destroying them. The genocide we were talking about them earlier has meant that if you went out and killed people from the African continent, it's not the same way as you kill someone who has a citizenship of the US, even if they are alone, because the whole US government will stand up, they will make sanctions, they will respond in such a way that they defend their own. In Africa, we're not doing this. African leaders, I also have to say this, that African leaders refuse to prioritize their issues and prioritize the African community very well. The leaders of the African continent have not brought an urgent meeting between the leaders of South Africa and themselves, even in the Southern Africa region, to discuss this. It has been brewing now for more than 3 or 4 months. We've never really had anything like that. And this shows you in the rankings where we belong. But I certainly feel like you are correct in your assessment. It is Afrophobia, and it is done so by people who are not emancipated mentally, and they're doing this because they think these are soft targets. They can be killed like flies or anything. And that threat is real. It's real.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. King Kabala, did you want to make a comment before I follow on this question? That the going of South Africa...
No, I think...
Okay, go ahead.
No, I think the assessment made by King Jackie is perfectly well. If I have to add something to that, is maybe how colonial mentality acts practically, because one of the things that colonialism taught us was firstly to hate ourselves. We hate ourselves because we hate our conditions, and we wanted to occupy the condition of the colonizers. Even at the independence period, the expectation for most Africans was to take the place of the white people who were the colonizers, so that they can enjoy the life of the white people. They can have the title of white people being called sir, because as colonized, we were not called sir. So the African identity itself has been rendered something disgusting, something that must be destroyed. And this projection of self-hate is what we apply towards other fellow who look like ourselves. It's psychological effects of colonialism. That is why it's easy to go and attack a fellow African, regardless of whether they have papers or not. But when you see a white person, or you see a Chinese person, you begin shaking and you call them sir, and you appease yourself. It's just clear as it is.
White foreign nationals are our brothers. We love them. They're our racial kin. Maybe you should learn to love your brothers the way we love ours. Just a thought. With regards to my racial kin from Europe coming to this country, I hope more of them come. I hope this answers your question.
Very sad. And I'd hope that you both would contradict my observation and say, no, that's not true. That is not true. It is very disappointing, and I'd hope that others would join this panel who are indeed members of the marches and are...
if I may...
Of course.
Just one thing. This characteristic of colonial mentality, I should emphasize that is not particular to South Africa. It's something that is still existing in Congo, Nigeria, Ghana, all these African countries. We are still suffering from psychological disease of colonialism and slavery, and Africa cannot be liberated with this mindset. Thank you.
Well said. And that also applies to the Caribbean as well, I've got to say. The large part of the Caribbean. It is a pretty fundamental issue that we have to face head on. Okay, but I have to say that your observation, King Kabala, that the so-called African population in South Africa, other than South Africans, of course, is less than 5%. Okay, less than 5%. So it is totally logical to suggest that other Africans have taken away the jobs of South Africans. It is totally illogical. The vast majority are investors who are taking the risk, the entrepreneurial risk, to invest in the country that they believe has a future. And to see those aeroplanes of those investors leave South Africa, returning to Nigeria, returning to Ghana, and so on, was profoundly disappointing in so many ways. And as I said, I welcome those who are part of those marches. If they feel able, we would love to speak directly to them, because the details and the foundation upon which they were marching are foundation that we need to look closely at. But it is a collective responsibility to raise the consciousness of the people. Okay, let me just move on, because in that tone, Pan-African identity is what I want to address. South Africa played a significant role in the liberation struggle of the continent, with support coming from many African nations. How should South Africans balance legitimate concerns about immigration, legitimate concern, with the principles, and I say again, the principles of African solidarity and Pan-African unity? How should they do this? It's and in fact, I wonder if the majority of South Africans believe in Pan-Africanism. I'm happy to answer that question. I'm going to put it to you directly, Jackie. Do they believe in Pan-Africanism?
Yes, I've had many people, many leaders, including the leaders of the March on March, or do you believe it, who say they stand for, they are not xenophobic, that's what they say. And they say they stand for continental unity, but they say it must be done in the right way, because this undocumented people who come into the country come in with crimes. Some have run away from their countries because they have committed extreme atrocities in Rwanda and so forth. They say they've met them and are here on the South African environment to continue with peddling drugs and so on. They specifically point out issues that they say are entirely not right, and the crimes that are taking place because people are not properly documented cannot be assigned to anyone because they are not in the system in South Africa. So these practical issues that they raise contradicts their commitment to Pan-Africanism on the face of it. And I think, quite frankly, I think the whole South African project, the new South Africa project, as established in 1994, has not been properly debriefed. South Africans have not been debriefed to understand where they are after that whole era of apartheid and the yoke of oppression. They still, and I thought the new generation would find it easy, but I think they also act the same way that people who lived in apartheid work. I mean, let me give you, I know you would say this is not true. So I'm saying it exists. Because of the nature of the oppression that we had in the country, people could not open a business and sell glasses, cups, and things like that, because they would be arrested.
Yes.
Yes, for doing that was illegal. People could not own their small backyard garage businesses and establish things because they said the apartheid system denied us access to that. What they haven't been debriefed on is to say, no, now you can do this. Now you can expand and go out and do. They still want employment. They don't want to take initiative and be entrepreneurs. In most instances, where these opportunities have been given in the last 30 years, they failed utterly. They failed bad. And the comparison is that you look at white communities. The Afrikaner community, we used to have a poor white problem in South Africa some 50 years back. The poor white, the Afrikaners are now well off. They are the beneficiaries of this change. They have established fantastic schools for themselves and use the same instruments of exclusion that they've had before. They have even, I mean, I'm just talking about an example of an e-hailing service. In Pretoria, you have an e-hailing service that you can use only if you use Afrikaans.
Oh.
Now, currently today, you see, that sounds like I knew it would be shocking, but it does exist right now. It does exist, that sort of thing. Now, the people who are looking for jobs don't realize that they're pointing at the wrong corner. They're mistaken in trying to lay the blame on African intellectuals who have studied in Europe and other areas, even on the African continent, and who apply for jobs and are qualified to serve in our higher education institution because they know their subject, they've done, they've studied. They refuse to take them in. If you take someone who speaks French and knows the French language and say they must go and lecture at one of the higher institutions, where would you get an African speaking French? Obviously from the Francophone Africa, as we call it.
Yes.
Now, they're opposed to people like that. What else should we do? But really blame colonial mentality.
Thank you. I want to comment immediately. King Gabala, what would you say on this particular point? That's the last part of the question is, how should South Africans balance legitimate concern about immigrations with the principles of solidarity and Pan-African unity?
I look at it as a conflict between a long-term vision versus a short-term vision. And there has been a conflict even in the past, because the long-term vision to build Africa requires unity, requires African solidarity, a short-term vision as well requires that people need to be properly taken care of now. People have to have access to proper medical facility, people need to have food on the tables, which means people need to have jobs. So when you don't create balance between these two visions, then you have a conflict either with the future expectations or with the current situations. So, for example, what is happening now is that, okay, South Africa is, I believe that South Africa has got a Pan-African vocation, because even if you listen to their national anthem, it's not based on South Africa, but it's based on Africa. It's like, God bless Africa. You know, a lot of structures in South Africa are aimed at continental level. You know, you have we have a Pan-African Congress, Pan-African Parliament building here in South Africa. You have all these structures. However, the population, you can have those beautiful visions for the future to unite Africa, but if now you don't feed people properly, you don't provide jobs for people, you find yourself under pressure, and it becomes a conflict that you cannot properly handle. So I think that is the problem that South Africa is facing now. And you can even see many people who fought for the African unity. I see them now kind of drifting from that agenda in order to respond to or to conform to the emotions of the masses, so that they can be elected. Because if you don't do that, you get punished anyway. And I think that's one of the reasons the EFF has challenged, because the EFF has this ideal of Africa, this idea of ideal Africa, ideal Pan-Africa, ideal South Africa, where people are mature enough to understand that for South Africa to properly liberate, or any other African country for that matter, for the proper liberation or economic liberation for that matter to take place, we need African solidarity. But they have that vision, which is very good and ideal, but they are kind of short-sighted on the reality on the ground. What is the expectation of the people, especially when you have the so-called democracy? If you have the democracy, it has to conform with the attitude of the masses. And if people want something else, you want to push something else, you get punished by the people. I think that conflict is what is playing around now.
I agree. And of course, we discussed earlier on the levels of unemployment, particularly amongst the young people, the youth, is above 50%, 60, in some cases 70, 80%, which at those
figures that a catastrophe. That is a catastrophe, a national crime, a national crime. Therein lies the real problem, and why it's easier. And thank you, Jackie. You're quite right. Easier, therefore, to blame fellow Africans, not the structural system that was created by foreigners. And I'm using the word properly now, foreigners, because they are foreigners. And those foreigners continue to control the economy. Okay. Oh, I wish we had the marchers were present here today. We need to have this honest dialogue, this honest debate. But I want to move us forward, and I'm just conscious as we draw to a close. Pan-African economic solutions, and you started to allude to this, okay? If Africa is to prosper collectively, what practical steps should South Africa and other African nations take to strengthen trade, investment, skills transfer, and economic cooperation across the continent? I'll lead you both to choose.
Can I take it?
Of course, yes.
You know, we do have thought leaders in Africa. We do have brilliant minds that are not far from our communities, but have their roots and their hearts in the right place as far as Africa is concerned.
Yes.
And you also have a business leadership in Africa that is able to put and chart a way forward. But there has not been a fit between the politicians on the one hand, the political elite rather, and the business vision that needs to take place in Africa. You have also had ethnic and tribal conflict on the African continent as a uppermost way of looking at it without necessarily emphasizing the unity. But I'm taking the economic approach because I think it is easier done properly for us to unite around economic issues because trade is very important.
Yes.
And there is a vision that says Africa will be a leading continent on world trade if it takes care of its real advantages, that we can be the leader in the fourth industrial revolution because the rest of the African continent can expand on those issues. We should be having an advantage. I know the railroads are a problem, but we can have modern railroads that make it easy for me to be in Kinshasa in a limited short period, and then come back the next day. We should have all these modern accoutrements that make life easier. But you see, they don't fall from the sky. We must have proper planning and introduce young people to acquire skills.
Yes.
And come back and use those skills on the African continent. And encourage them to do that. And I want to refer you to a businessman in South Africa, an African. His name is Phuthuma Nhleko, and he wrote The Invisible People. It's one of the Penguin books published in 2026, a few months back. I read the book. And the invisible people he talks about is the African people. Nobody thinks we're human enough to can interact with the world. But we must be visible. We some of the advantages we have among ourselves. We are a bigger market when we are united. This man led MTN. He came with a strategy to spread MTN on the African continent. So he knows what he's talking about. But he gives you chapter and verse on how these strategies. And I think that kind of thought leadership that says we need to have an advanced, our politicians are demagogues. They talk these things and have nothing to to do with the implementation, and they continue to create a divide. They want to create, I mean, as is happening in South Africa, to create a divide between the local people. They don't have their priorities right. They want another Biafra. We should get rid of that mentality and look at ourselves as an economic area, and that in an economic areas there are many opportunities. Let the entrepreneurs, those who are innovative, thrive. I think that is the right political approach to the issue that we should look at and give it a try. I know we've had so many disappointments, but the new generations, the youth, must also enter that framework and work on it. We must train people. We must take them throughout the world where they can be trained, whether they come from or Sudan, South Sudan, or wherever. Let's work in a uniform way, in unity.
Thank you. Yes, in unity is strength. Thank you, Jackie. King Gabala, to make a comment on my question.
Yeah, so I think for me, I love the economic aspect as outlined by the king, and I want to add by saying that it's always good to begin from the question of who we are today. How do we look at ourselves? Because I think the mistake in which we have been led into was to believe that we are free. Now we can prosper. Because now even your question, how can
Sir Louis Hines, principal of the New Building Early Childhood Institution in New Building, Nain, St. Elizabeth. We were adversely affected by the passing of Hurricane Melissa on October 28, 2025. And as such, we lost our school roof, we have lost furniture, books, and other learning materials for our young ones. I am hereby making a plea asking for any contribution that can be given to assist us in further renovating our school building so that our students can return to some semblance of normalcy. We have already received some donations and we're able to cover half the roof. The other half is patched up with the old zinc that was there from before. And as such, any contribution is an investment in our young ones, the future generation. And so this is my plea, asking for any contribution that can be given in assisting us to be better able to facilitate our young students. Thank you so very much.
New Building, Early Childhood School, New Buildings District, Nain, St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. On behalf of PNP UK, we hope you would agree that this school needs to be rebuilt so that the children can enjoy the teaching and learning experience. Support the Hurricane Melissa Disaster Relief Fund to build back better the school. Send your donation, whatever you can afford, to PNP UK. That's at NatWest Bank, sort code 600802, account number 298612333. And in the bank reference, please quote DRF Melissa. Thank you for considering. Thank you for your donations. Okay, there you are. It was suddenly interrupted, I know, but we are about to come to a close for the Motivator Show for this episode. The dialogue you've just witnessed is one that continues. Within the next 24 hours, a new podcast will be produced from that dialogue, so you can see the entire dialogue. And as you can see and have experienced, it has been a truly inspirational dialogue. We delved into the issue with due consideration to the feelings of the people of South Africa, but also place the issue in the correct context. We've identified the source of the problem. The original sin, of course, is, the Berlin Conference, the creation of those colonial colonies, and now they become national borders
which we must resolve. The further sin is at the point of so-called independent South Africa. It left intact the unjust advantage to a small minority, primarily Eurasians, people from Europe, in other words, Dutch, English, British, if you like, French, German, yeah, Italian, Belgian, Americans, yes, even Americans were given an unfair economic advantage because they were able to have total control of the economy, plus 98% of the economy being controlled by foreigners. A recipe for, by any stretch of the imagination, for disaster. The economic sluggishness you've experienced in South Africa is a result of this fact. Unemployment levels amongst particularly young people in South Africa, above 50%, in some areas up to 80%, is a national catastrophe. But only possible where foreigners have absolute control over your economy, and therefore you're not able to determine the future. That's the problem. That's the essence of the problem. And of course, as I said earlier on, if you control the wealth of a nation, you influence the politics of the nation. If you control the wealth of the nation, you own the communication portal, such as those big social media companies. Yeah, and therefore they can affect opinions. If you control the wealth of the nation, you can control the health of the nation. Clearly, health requires resources to pay for it. If you control the wealth of the nation, you control the universities and what is taught. That's wrong and must change. That's wrong and must change. Praise Jah, Rastafari. And then you get to the essence of the problem. My personal experience, and I urge you all to run a similar experiment for yourself, have been assaulted with Afrophobic videos, but many were contrived videos designed to alter my perception of people that look like me. Yeah, that's the intention, deliberate intention, if you ever want one. Okay, and therefore, those who wish to sow ethnic divide, yeah, are being given a free hand in South Africa. We've got similar problems here in Britain. Let me tell you, you most certainly have the issues raised in Washington, United States of America right now. That's the essence of the problem. That's why Pan-Africanism is so critical. It is absolutely critical. Identifying what we have in common and use as the basis for discussion, genuine dialogue, mutual respect. But I have to tell you, I love to visit South Africa. I'd love to invest in that country. I want to be a part of that country's renaissance. Okay, absolutely want to do so. Absolutely want to do so. I know someone said to me only quite recently, South Africans could do it by themselves. No country could do it by themselves. And I suggest to you all, in unity is strength. African unity, Pan-Africanism is our strength. And there are many who wish to undermine that statement for their own nefarious reasons. So this episode of The Motivator was intended to be thought-provoking. It's intended to ensure that there is a understanding of the real issues. It's intended to create sort of spiritual togetherness, yeah, comradeship, commune together. It's intended, of course, to give hope to young people that this generation understands the issues and we're prepared to overcome petty differences. whether that be religious or cultural, traditional or otherwise, because in unity is strength. Praise be, praise be. I want to thank my guest for their erudite discussions today. Okay, but within 24 hours, the podcast will be out. It'll be a series of episodes, so it's in bite-sized chunks. Okay, additional addendums to each of those episodes we made, so for further clarity, greater depth. Okay, but you should use this as a tool for unity. It is a tool for unity. We stand with the people of South Africa. I could say again, we stand with the people of South Africa. Praise be, praise be, praise Jah. Rastafari. So this episode of the Motivator Show means well. It means unity. It means strength. And why that figure of the man breaking the chains of colonial mentality and now defining for ourselves. Does that make sense to you all? It made sense, is it? I hope it made sense. What I'm going to do, I'm going to play it again because I'm told you want to hear it again. I'm going to play it for you again. Here you go. Let me try one more time. Here we go. Play it again for you.
Amanza! 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 Amanza!
Breaking the chains of colonial control, we will define our identity. We will define our nations. We will define our future. We define for ourselves. I understand the ladies like that one. I understand. I know. We will do you proud, ladies. We will do you proud. We will do you proud. Thank you. Thank you. Many of you have stayed with us now. It is a little while. And I just want to, before we go, I want to address the issues that is really important, yet another really important issue, and that's of our health. Before you go, don't go yet, please, don't go yet, of our health. Again, this is the Motivator Show, therefore we take up those issues to which there is an awareness, but not a reminder of its critical nature. As I go around the world, whether it be here in Britain, Europe, the Caribbean, or the Americas, and indeed many parts of Africa, health is an incredibly important issue. We have a situation in the Caribbean, which should be a national, international emergency, a diabetes and hypertension or high blood pressure epidemic. And for the life of me, I don't understand why it is not seen as being critical, because it is clearly impacting in the most significant way the health and well-being of people in the Caribbean and United States of America, and most certainly here in Britain. So I want to play a statement made by Professor Hilary Beckles, the Vice Chancellor of the Universities of the West Indies, and his observations, not only of his own family, but of healthcare, particularly in respect of diabetes and high blood pressure in the Caribbean. Take note.
We have 60% of the black people in the Caribbean over the age of 60 have hypertension or diabetes, or both. Now, if you take the single criterion of chronic diseases, hypertension, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, if you take that simple criterion, the black people in the Caribbean are the unhealthiest people on the planet. And you have to understand that. On the one hand, we are watching Usain Bolt and we're watching the Caribbean athletes. We're watching the Caribbean with an image of being the most athletic people on the planet. But beneath that image of these super sportsmen and women is the hard reality that we are now the sickest people on the planet. In every black family in the Caribbean, hypertension and diabetes is endemic and congenital. In my family, almost everybody over 60 has hypertension and diabetes.
Quite a statement. In his family, virtually everyone has either diabetes or high blood pressure, hypertension, if they're over 60. That is a catastrophic figure. And he's a very well-known figure, the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. It thereby means that we must take this subject seriously, very seriously. We cannot ignore it. Here in Britain, the figures are not quite as acute, but on their way there, you've got obesity is exacerbating the problem. Obesity is, of course, fatness, particularly amongst the women. The majority of our women are overweight, carrying excess weight, and that's having a negative impact on their health. I want you to hear the words of another professor. He's a public health director for London, much of South East England. Okay. His words are just common sense advice. Okay. I'm going to play them. Some of you may have heard them before, but it's good to hear them again. You know, this is the repetition necessary. Let's listen to this.
Professor Kevin Fenton says, I'm a public health director. Here are 5 things you can do to improve your health. 1. Mindful and balanced eating. Nourish wisely. Eat whole, balanced meals with awareness to support energy and well-being. 2. Get outside. Be with nature. Time outside reduces stress, improves mood, and strengthens your connection to the world. 3. Stay curious, stay engaged, explore new interests, keep your mind sharp, build social contacts, and boost your happiness. 4. Get active, move it or lose it. Move daily, lift weight, and do cardio. Exercise, improve physical, mental, mood, and energy. 5. Prioritize rest and sleep. Disconnect. Rest. Quality sleep supports mental clarity, emotional balance, and overall health.
There you are. Common sense advice. Yeah, Professor Kevin Fenton, Public Health Director for London. Yes, he's a Jamaican man. Yeah? Common sense advice. We need to hear his common sense advice. It is a health emergency. Even if it's not being reported in the international press or indeed our national, it is a health emergency. We have 30, 40, 50% of the population either with diabetes or high blood pressure or indeed obesity, where you have evidence, clear evidence. Women of African heritage, whether from the continent or indeed from the Caribbean, who are overweight, carrying excess weight. That is a public health emergency. What I'm heartened by, the number of you who've heard these messages, have understood their importance and responded and come together in common aim and common purpose, understanding we work together. If we really work together, we can address those big issues together. And in doing so, we transform our health and well-being. And yes, the Motivator Show is a holistic show. We are here. We are a holistic channel. So we're concerned not only about your wealth, but your personal monetary wealth, not only concerned about your mental health, we're absolutely concerned with your physical health as well. We'll try to ensure that in each of our episodes, we address those issues in unity. But I want to show you an example of people who've come together in common aim and common purpose and understood if they work together, if they pull their resources together, they can exercise together. And together, they can transform their health. Watch this example of Africans who've come together in common aim and common purpose and now exercise together from right across the continent here in London. Exercise together. That's right, they've come together in common aim and common purpose, understanding if we work together, exercise together, we become healthy together. There you are. Then stretch their arms. Do the same. This is for you. We're not leaving you. There, watching us. Consider your physical, mental, there you are. See, you can do it. We can do it. I've shown you an example of people from diverse African backgrounds, from the continent of the Caribbean, the Americas, and here in Europe, who've come together in common aim and common purpose, and now exercise together, talking about their health together, indeed improving collectively their health together. Because together we can make the difference. In unity is strength. That's the way forward. That's the way forward. And lastly, before I leave, I believe it's vitally important that I mention again, and they came in quite early, but I just want to say again, in response to what is a clear and present danger, and that is, of course, climate change. I mentioned this early on. You've seen a short clip, but I want to mention this now because it's not been mentioned, I observe, on podcasters or people of African descent. I note we don't discuss this issue enough. I wish to encourage you to think about the issue because it will have a profound impact this year, 10 years, and into the next century. And if we don't take proactive steps to mitigate the impact of climate change, it may be to our collective detriment. So I urge our policymakers, I heard family members, I heard community members to consider climate change and what it means. Together we can, you can, we can, together make the difference. But if in doubt, ask questions. They've given an example of a school in Jamaica affected by Hurricane Melissa, notwithstanding the failings of the current Jamaican government, but a school that has struggled to reinstate the services for the little ones. I'm going to play that video just one more time, just so you can hear the voice of the school principal, her most sincere appeal so that school can be brought back into use. This is the Motivator Show. This is what happens here on the Motivator Show. Bring those issues to light, issues which are of concern but are not given sufficient light of day. Motivator Show. We are unapologetic. We are unapologetic. those issues of real concern to the community, we will give light to. Okay. And we know in some cases it may not be that popular. We get that. We have no choice. We are totally committed. Listen to the school principal. I'm sure your heart, as my heart, has been moved by her sincerity. Thank you.
Everyone, I am Lexia Lewis Hines, principal of the New Building Early Childhood Institution in New Building, Nain, St. Elizabeth. We were adversely affected by the passing of Hurricane Melissa on October 28, 2025. And as such, we lost our school roof, we have lost furniture, books, and other learning materials for our young ones. I am hereby making a plea asking for any contribution that can be given to assist us in further renovating our school building so that our students can return to some semblance of normalcy. We have already received some donations and we're able to cover half the roof. The other half is patched up with the old zinc that was there from before. And as such, any contribution is an investment in our young ones, the future generation. And so this is my plea, asking for any contribution that can be given in assisting us to be better able to facilitate our young students. Thank you so very much.
New Building, Early Childhood School, New Buildings District, Nain, St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. On behalf of PMP UK, we hope you would agree that this school needs to be rebuilt so that the children can enjoy the teaching and learning experience. Support the Hurricane Melissa Disaster Relief Fund to build back better the school. Send your donation, whatever you can afford, to PNP UK. That's at NatWest Bank, sort code 600802, account number 298612333. And in the bank reference, please quote DRF Melissa. Thank you for considering. Thank you for your donations.
And there you are. And the last issue, an incredibly important issue for the Demotivator Show, is that we're going on an official visit to Burkina Faso. And you are welcome to join us. Yep. It's important that we support a government that displays good governance. It is for the people, with the people. Mm-hmm. And it demonstrates a tenacity, a determination to succeed, while upholding the highest possible standards of governance. A president, a young man, the youngest president in the world, Ibrahim Traore. A remarkable, no, he's not remarkable. All of our children are remarkable, yeah? He's simply a convicted leader, understood that this time his leadership will make a difference. Let's give a big thumbs up to the people of Burkina Faso. Yeah, a big thumbs up. Applaud them for what they have achieved and will continue to achieve. Applaud the leaders of the Sahel countries, that Mali and Niger, who are with Burkina Faso to create that union of countries, who are setting the standard as to how to effectively run African countries. Clear standard. These are not standards that have been imported elsewhere. These are African standards, and they're incredibly high standards. Okay. So we will make an official visit to Burkina Faso next year. You are all most welcome to join us. Okay. I'm going to play for you a very short video, which is our invitation to you to join us. This will be a truly inspirational experience. Here we go.
This is your moment. Don't let it pass. The UK Black Business Entrepreneur Conference 2026. NatWest Conference Centre, Bishopsgate, London, 8th July. Come and hear from world-class speakers and renowned entrepreneurs. If you've been thinking about starting, growing, or taking your business seriously, this is where it happens. Learn how to build and scale globally. Unlock innovation and tech to move faster. Get in the room with people who are actually doing it. No more waiting. No more watching from the sidelines. 70% sold out. The room is filling fast. Secure your seat now. www.thebbec.com. Eventbrite.
We are building a future that is not just sustainable, but truly extraordinary.
Be in the room or hear about it late. This is your...
There you are. And now, of course, now for Burkina Faso. Here we go. Discover Burkina Faso, the place of the rising spirit. The calling has gone out. Go to website address letsdiscoverburkina.com. Letsdiscoverburkina.com. You are invited to visit on 17th of March to the 1st of April 2027. We are a holiday destination. Many investment opportunities. We are family friendly. A great place just to relax. Go to website address letsdiscoverburkina.com. Visit Burkina Faso. 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 I think you agree. It'll be an exciting trip. Want to join us? Join us. It'll be safe. It'll be homely, very homely. They will take care of us. It will be truly an inspirational experience. I understand some of you much prefer to use these QR codes. I'm going to put it on the screen, the relevant QR code. There you are. If you point your phone at the screen, that will take you to the website. And the details of the trip will be there on the website. We positively encourage you to join us. It will be truly an inspirational experience. Truly inspirational. And together we will make the difference. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I think that now takes us to a close. I want to thank you for your support. If you haven't subscribed, we want to encourage you to do so. Okay. If you leave a comment, don't just leave, just leave a comment. We always welcome your commentary. Okay. Share links to these podcasts with your family, your friends, your wider networks, and together we will spread the word. Thank you for your support. We truly appreciate you all. I'm going to continue to say this. If in doubt, ask questions. If in doubt, ask questions. But be confident that we work together with a clear mission, a clear purpose, that we can and we will transform our world. The world is our oyster, regardless of what anyone says to you. The world is our oyster, regardless of what anyone says to you. Yeah, did that make sense? I need to say again, because I know in some cases it's can be quite challenging to believe, because the propaganda is so intense. The world is our oyster. It's for us to fully exploit. Success is ours for the taking. Until the next strong, I remain the motivator.
Amanza! 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 Amanza!
Breaking the chains of colonial control, We will define our identity. We will define our nations. We will define our future. Before we continue, we ask for your support. If you believe in the mission of Demotivatorshow to inform, inspire, educate and empower the African diaspora and our friends around the world, please take a moment to like this video. Every like helps more people discover these important conversations. Leave a comment below. We read your views, your experiences and your suggestions, and they often help shape our future programs. If you've not already done so, subscribe to the channel. We are building a growing community of people committed to truth, self-determination, Pan-African progress and a positive change. Please share this video with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your social media networks, and share could be the reason someone discovers information that changes their perspective forever. And finally, press the bell icon and select all notifications so you never miss an interview, analysis, a discussion, or a special broadcast. Thank you for your continued support. Together, we inform, inspire, and build a brighter future. Welcome to The Motivator Show.
Amanza! 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 Amanza!